Well, like I said, it's basically what they did back then, in the early to mid '90s. They released these special holiday themed VHSs, and the Christmas one had the Christmas specials of Darkwing Duck, which is It's a Wonderful Leaf, and Goof Troop Christmas, which is Have Yourself a Merry Goofy Little Christmas or something like that, or Have Yourself a Goofy Little Christmas. So those were released later on, I think around maybe a few weeks after these were. But before then, Disney also decided to release VHSs with a Halloween theme. And basically what these VHSs consisted of were episodes from different Disney afternoon shows that, like I said, had a bit of a Halloween theme to them. So the first one, again, I don't know, okay, this is volume 1, this is volume 2. So the first volume was Boo Brothers, and on here, on Boo Brothers, you had from Goof Troop Halloweenies, which is basically the Goof Troop Halloween special, and the Rescue Ranger episode Ghost of a Chance. So those were the episodes consisted that were placed on here on the Boo Brothers volume. And again, these were released in see a little bit of loose plastic there, but it's okay. But these were released basically in the early to mid '90s, and this was also at a time, I think, when Disney was trying to be more hip in style in the way they designed the VHS tapes and stuff. But yeah, that was volume 1 of the Halloween themed VHSs, which again, like I said, consisted of 2 episodes, one episode each from the different different Disney afternoon shows. But the Rescue Rangers, this wouldn't be the last time Rescue Rangers would be on here. No, Rescue Rangers actually appeared in the next volume, which was volume 3, the last volume. They appeared in the last. Pardon me for that. Had to get that out of my system. But like I said, Rescue Rangers appeared in the last volume of the Halloween-related VHS releases. And here, they shared the VHS space with Darkwing Duck. And the Darkwing Duck episode was Ghoul of My Dreams, which starred Darkwing and Morgana, which featured Morgana in there, his girlfriend. And then the Rescue Ranger episode, speaking of girlfriends, was Good Times, Bat Times. That's right, Good Times, Bat Times was the episode. Was the episode placed on here, which basically makes it which not only makes the Rescue Rangers the only show to appear twice, and probably more often than the other 2. Well, actually, I take that back. The Halloween-themed VHSs make Rescue Rangers and Darkwing Duck the most released on VHS at that time. So, yeah, Rescue Rangers and Darkwing Duck got the most releases out of this, because the second volume was Monster Bash, and that consisted of a Monster Mash related episode of DuckTales, I think, where Scrooge McDuck opened up his new hotel or something like that unexpectedly to a monster party or whatever. And the other one is Monsters Are Us, I believe, is also on there on the second volume, which is called Monster Bash. But like I said, Darkwing Duck and Rescue Rangers are the most shown on these volumes. And again, and you know what's funny also is Witcheroo, which is volume 3 in the Halloween related VHS releases, is the only official home video release, not just of Good Times, Bad Times, but also of the debuting Foxglove. Yeah, it's the only official release with her debut. So that's pretty cool. And I remember looking at the VHSs and seeing these and seeing what was on there, and I was surprised. I was really surprised, and I think I got these, I think I got these off eBay or something, I can't really remember. I gotta put these back later anyway. But yeah, Rescue Rangers really had an impact when it came to home video media. But it wasn't just home video media that they had an impact. See, obviously Disney knew something special was going to come out of the show. Something very special. Because when Rescue Rangers made the debut in syndication in 1989, and they made the debut with the pilot movie To the Rescue, the way they concluded this pilot movie was with a music video which contained a pop version of the theme song, a pop version which was performed by the Grammy-nominated Jets. Yeah, that's right, the Jets, which was a pop group, which was and still is a pop group, if you will, but a major pop group in the 80s. And Disney was able to obtain them, was able to get them and obtain them, was able to obtain and get them to perform the pop version of the Rescue Rangers theme song. And at this time, no other show before or after that had ever had an actual pop group or, world-renowned singer or music group doing the theme song of any kind. Not once. Now you might say, well, Eddie Money did Quack Packs. Okay, fine. But did he do a music video? No. Rescue Rangers had one dedicated to them. That tells you that Disney pretty much knew Rescue Rangers was going to be a big deal. And they did, and boy, were they right on the money about that. They were right on the money about that assumption. Because it did become a big deal. It did become a big deal. As a matter of fact, let me get these for a second. This here, Disney had their own comic book division, right? They had their own comic books division before they teamed at Marvel. And this here, right in my hands, is every single issue of the Rescue Ranger comic book series by Disney Comics. Every single issue. And what was funny about these comics was, just like any comics at the time, of course you're going to start off with the origin story being similar to the origin story, if you will, on the cartoon. But what was unique was, just like any other comics at that time, they decided to go off in their own direction afterwards. Each comic after the origin story was its own self-contained arc or issue. They even had one on it. In fact, the next arc that came after it was King of the Beast. And then basically, it was like an arc after King of the Beast. You have the aftermath arc where they're trying to get home, and then they encounter a new group of characters known as the Techno Rats, the Wasp Patrol, the Fearless Frogs. And then finally they have a two-part arc, or a three-part arc, if you will, where they go to the Himalayas and then they meet up with some jock guy that knew Gadget's dad had. And what was and that was another thing too. They explored Gadget's past a little bit more than they ever did because in the cartoon, because they mentioned not only her last name, but they mentioned the father's name of Igor. I mean, basically Disney, whoever wrote the comics for the original Disney comics run for the Rescue Rangers, obviously knew that if you were going to get people that were watching the show to read the comic, you had to not only give them a different kind of continuity than what they saw there, or a different kind of run than what they saw on television, but you had to give them more than what they were getting there. And that, my friends, is fact. Because let me say this. Let me say this, if you will. But, hold on while I put these back. Let me say this. Let me say this. It's not the first time this happens either. It's not the first time. Ninja Turtles, which I told you was part of that 2-hour block that I recorded off television back in '89 and '90. Ninja Turtles also did this when Archie Comics picked them up. Archie Comics, of course, adapted the first few episodes into comic book form, and then they went off into their own adventures. And in fact, the adventures of the comics became more targeted towards an older audience than what you saw in the cartoon at times. So that was unique in its own right. It's true, it was unique in its own right. Now, after that, after the run there, of course they appeared in the Disney Afternoon comic books in the Disney Afternoon comic book series released by Marvel. But throughout that time as well, they also appeared in Disney Adventure comics. Disney Adventures magazine, which ran for quite some time, also had several of the mini digest magazines had comics in there. And Rescue Rangers, of course, was part of that in a major way, especially this one. Now, I saw this cover recently on the Facebook Disney Afternoon Forever page, and I basically said, and people were asking, does anybody remember this or have it? And I said, hey, I have it. And here it is right in front of you. And here you have Bronson Pinchot, the guy that played the foreign guy in Perfect Strangers. And he's posed right there with the Rescue Rangers, which is pretty cool. And they do have a story in here called Home Wreckers, which is a really unique read. You got to see that for yourself. But yeah, they continued on in Disney Adventures. Like I said, the art, of course, was a little bit more different at times, but what are you going to do? Sorry about the silence there, folks. I had to make sure I put it in correctly. But yeah, they were in Disney Adventures. Now, what's funny about this, though, is Rescue Rangers in 1990, of course, became part of the Disney Afternoon, along with Gummy Bears, DuckTales, and the debuting Tailspin. Now, Rescue Rangers. Now, the one thing about the Disney Afternoon, and I mentioned this in my cartoon flashback deal of the Gummy Bears, and as well as on a text review of the Gummy Bears as well, was the Disney Afternoon had a ruling, basically, a very unique rule. And that unique rule, ladies and gentlemen, was that if you were the first show... Hold on for a second. Turn the fan on so we can get some air in here. But basically, they had a unique rule at that time, and that unique rule was if you were the first show to air as part of the block, as soon as a newer show came in, you left. And the show that came after you became the first show, or took your place as the first show. So the original lineup for the original Disney Afternoon lineup was Gummy Bears, DuckTales, Rescue Rangers, and Tailspin. So when Darkwing Duck came on board, Gummy Bears left the Disney Afternoon, and the lineup went to being DuckTales, Rescue Rangers, Tailspin, and Darkwing Duck. Okay. Goof Troop comes on board. DuckTales leaves, if you will. And now you have Rescue Rangers, Tailspin, Darkwing, and Goof Troop. And so guess what happens when Bonkers comes around? And this is why a lot of Rescue Ranger fans have a dislike for Bonkers, even though I'm a fan of the show itself. Here's why some fans have a disliking for it. Bonkers comes in. What happens? Rescue Rangers being the first show airing on Disney Afternoon, bye-bye. Goes off Disney Afternoon and into weekday morning syndication, and then later on into the Disney Channel's Block Party in 1994. That's right, in 1994, Disney Afternoon went from Disney Afternoon to TDA, and Disney Channel decided, I guess, to pick up the slack a little bit, and they created a very similar block called the Block Party. And this lasted for about a season or so, but it's very similar in some ways to the Disney Afternoon. So that was kind of cool in its own right. And then of course, Rescue Rangers went later on, a few years later, onto Toon Disney. That's right, Toon Disney. When it came out in 1998, obtained a lot of the Disney stuff, a lot of Disney-related stuff, other shows, and just broadcasted it as did those shows up until a certain time. And Rescue Rangers was one of them. Rescue Rangers actually stayed on the Disney Afternoon a lot longer than the show that bumped it. I mean, not Disney Afternoon, but Rescue Rangers actually stayed on a lot longer than the show that bumped it off. That's right, it stayed on a lot longer than Bonkers. How do I know? That's how. This here, ladies and gentlemen, is the complete series of Rescue Rangers. Every single disc on here contains an episode of Rescue Rangers. Every single one. And this here is a Best of Rescue Rangers DVD right there. But that's proof right there that Rescue Rangers lasted a lot longer than the show that bumped it off the Disney Afternoon. Now you might say, well, how do I get the complete series? Well, it's real simple. You see, one of the things I talked about in my SatAM review, well, looking back at it, it's 20 years, is I talked about the fact that I took a page out of my cousin's playbook to try to record the second season of SatAM when it came on ABC originally. Well, I did the same thing with the Rescue Rangers when it came on Toon Disney. I did the same thing. I took a page out of his playbook, and I recorded several VHSs, I believe, of the show. And then when I got a DVD recorder, I started going in the DVD direction, and the rest is history. Now, part of that DVD recordings also included the 5 parts to the Rescue. Now, one of the things about the difference between the original pilot airing in movie format and sometimes airing in multi-part format is sometimes the multi-part will have certain parts taken out of the original movie. Basically the multi-part will have certain parts taken out while they will remain intact. Well, they will remain intact in the original movie run, if you will. However, sometimes that difference is reversed. sometimes the multi-parts will have more to the scene, will have more additional scenes than what you had in the original pilot movie run, in the original movie run of the pilot. Now, Tailspin, which came out a year later, kind of falls into the category of having scenes in the original movie pilot run that were cut out during the multi-part run later when it was shown in episodic form. But Rescue Rangers, they fall into the category of they had additional scenes in the multi-part episodic run than they did in the original movie pilot run. In other words, there were more scenes added in the episodic multi-parts than the original movie run. So basically what I did, when I got all 5 episodes, I edited them together best I could, and voila. Rescue Rangers the movie to the rescue. Right there. It's my own little VHS thing that I put together, if you will. But yeah, my own little Rescue Ranger thing I put together. But this is the entire miniseries right there in movie format. Best that I could come up with. Now, speaking of DVD, the Rescue Rangers did make a debut in DVD eventually. You see, for a while, Disney did release DuckTales at first onto DVD. And everybody thought, okay, DuckTales is here. Where's Rescue Rangers? Are we going to get that? And finally, we did get the word, I think after a volume or so, maybe 2 volumes or something like that of DuckTales, that Rescue Rangers was indeed going to get a volume, was going to get a DVD release. And here it was. Rescue Rangers on DVD. And I think I ordered this one, I believe, through Hastings.com or something like that. Pre-ordered it at Hastings and got it there. And this contains episodes 1 to 27. So, and it goes in episodic order, so it kind of tells you exactly what came first. So Calories Not Included, it was indeed the first episode. So yeah, these are really, really unique, really cool to have when you think about it. Right there. But I know myself and a lot of fans were ecstatic when we heard this. But you can only imagine our surprise when we found out the second volume was also coming. Now, the one thing we did kind of talk about and say about the first volume was we were asking where the pilot was. And only when the announcement was made that we were getting a second volume did we find out the second volume was going to contain the 5-episode pilot, or as it calls it on here, bonus 5-episode pilot. Now, the 5-episode pilot appears in in the first disc of the second volume, and it goes from there. And of course, volume 3 has one of my personal favorites. It's the second one on there, and that's Double O Chipmunk. That's pretty cool. And, you know, to me, that was the one thing I liked about Rescue Rangers, was not only did they have some great adventures and diverse characters that fit into the situations they needed to fit into, but I liked the fact that they did things you didn't think they were going to do with the established characters. I mean, one thing I liked about one of the subplots of the show, one of the comedic subplots, if you will, was you always had Chip and Dale not just doing the traditional fighting with each other, but sometimes they would try to up each other when it would come to trying to get Gadget's attention. That's right. See, but because Gadget was the only female on the team, both wanted to vie for her attention. Both wanted to vie for the opportunity to be her boyfriend. But that never happened. That never really happened. That was never really opened up. At times, true. When you watch certain episodes, they did flirt with her and she did flirt with them back. When she would do the half eyes closed deal, that kind of gave you the idea she was flirting. Take a look at Calories Not Included, for example. Take a look at Whether or Not. Take a look at some of these episodes, and you kind of get the idea of what I'm talking about. But not only was that unique as well, not only did you have Chip and Dale kind of vying for her attention, but you also had Gadget not just flirt with them, but also Gadget, to me, and I think a lot of people would agree with this, was like the heart of the team. It's like she was the heart of the team, so she kind of understood almost like where each were coming from at times. But mostly, I think, when people look at the show, you can almost say that, and I'm not trying to say this is a biased opinion, but I'm just saying this as a fan, that you can almost tell that she was almost more understanding of Dale than anybody else. Especially when you take a look at my favorite episode, Double O Chipmunk. Here you have Dale actually exhibiting the fact that he's more than just a wild guy wanting to go out and have fun kind of deal. That he's someone that can be very inventive, very intuitive, very smart. To the point that he takes one of his tuxedos, one of his own tuxedos, and fits it, and outfits it, if you will, with all sorts of gadgets, if you will. A belt buckle, a belt buckle that has a rope in it, a camera tie, a propeller, a helicopter propeller coming out of the back of his tuxedo. It was a great episode. It was a great moment for a character like Dale. And then you have Gadget, who feels sorry for him later on after he's basically made everybody angry, most of everybody angry. And she kind of tears up a little bit and says, you know what, Dale wants to be a spy, I'm going to help him. And how does she help him? She helps him by doing something she doesn't normally do, that I don't think no fan thought she would do, or the writers would even have her do. And I guess she's able to get Monterey and Chip and Monterey to go along with it. But she's able to put a little, originally what was supposed to be a spy game to make Dale feel better, she's able to orchestrate that, and even, if you will, sacrifice the fact that she's going to go out, put a dress on, put high heels on, put a bracelet on, put a little necklace on, put a blonde wig on, very whitish blonde wig, put lipstick and mascara on, I guess kind of tan or powder her fur, if you will, darker, and does act like a femme fatale out of a spy movie. And how far did she go with this role? She ends up kissing Dale on the lips, which of course makes Chip jealous, but again, this just shows how Gadget's like the heart of the team. And she's willing to go this far, she's willing to do this to make somebody like Dale, who, and again, I'm not saying this as a, to be biased, I'm just saying this as a fan, to make Dale feel better, to say, hey look, we're not mad at you, or like, yeah,